So, should we start now? Can you please settle down? So, I'm very, very happy to welcome Supriya here and to hear her talk and share stories from her Calcutta Chronicles. Before anything else, I think the question that I'm going to ask, which is what probably everyone asks you, is why did you think of writing this book? How did it come about?
So good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see so many students in audience. Thank you, Ruchira. The way this book started is that there's a chapter in the book called Matinee Magic. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I'd gone to watch a movie and I was buying the ticket, as we all do. You queue up and, you pick up your ticket, unless you've bought it online. And the guy who was selling the ticket was more interested that I buy popcorn or chips or whatever it is that they sell, and offering me the combo and so on. And didn't know the first thing about the movie, which, he was merely vending the tickets out. So that was that, and that thought stayed with me. And a couple of days later, I wrote a piece which was lying in my computer for a long time, much before the book happened, where I recalled, okay, let me ask you this. How many of you all sitting here know what a ticket bought in black means? One hand. Not bad. We are weeding out corruption from this country. Okay, quite a few. So what do you think it means? What does it mean when you buy a ticket in black? Yeah? Short answer. Right. So basically, you pay extra money, underhand money. When we were, much younger, your age, we used to have a guy come home, believe it or not, and he would have a ward of these tickets. They were not this fax paper tickets that you get today. According to the seat that you sat in, whether the balcony grade or the stalls or the dress circle. Anyone familiar with these terms? Not the teachers, the students. So, dress circle was the top order of a cinema hall that you could sit in. And he would have tickets to dress circle and balcony by the cinema halls. He had some arrangement. And he would come home and vend out these tickets and charge maybe about 5 rupees more, which was a lot of money, per ticket. So if you were buying, say, 5 tickets, you would have paid him that much extra. Now, not only was he somebody who came home and sold us these tickets at the doorstep, he knew exactly which song was, was from which film, who was the director. He really knew the film. He knew his trade. He knew the cinema halls and so on. So that made me think that these guys who are today sitting pretty much like robots and vending out those tickets, not even stamping them. And the only conversation that you'll have with them is, change nahi, khujo taka nahi, khujo din. That's about it. So that's when I wrote the first piece. And that time I had called it Pink Slip. Because, there used to be shreds of pink, little shreds of pink slips that were movie hall tickets. And then this piece was lying in my computer for a while. Friends had read it, and each one had their own episode that they recalled about how they would buy their tickets and go to movie halls and so on. And therefore, some of them said that, why don't you write more about these things, because this is lovely and so on. And eventually that's how this happened.
It is actually really, when I read this book, you couldn't stop because there were characters that you could almost, recognize from when you were kids, or someone that you'd heard of, someone, or the way you've sort of given the picture of things that were then, and really warm recollections. So you said it was just one story to begin with. When did it become a book? How did it become a book?
Right. So the thread of thought that kind of started in the head once that one piece found, really I had written it more for myself, I think, the first piece, not so much to produce before any audience. By chance, some friends read it and so on. And then the thread that germinated in the head was that there are all these characters, and it's not just about people. There are habits, there are characters, there are encounters, there are quirks, there are, all these odd practices that used to be very, very, very regular, very much part of our city, which all of a sudden have simply gone, simply vanished. And I felt that all of you sitting here, you read history that dates back 100, 200, 500, 1,000 years. Why won't you know how your parents grew up, which was only 20 years ago? It may not be in fashion anymore, but wouldn't you like to know how maybe an elder sibling went to watch a movie, or how maybe an elder cousin or some uncle, mama, kaku, anybody bought books? So I thought that that's the story that should also be preserved, because technology has overpowered our lives so much that we've forgotten these lovely characters, and I didn't want to forget them easily. In a way, it's a humble tribute also to some of them. And I also wanted to pass on the baton to the young, to the next generation, to say that, okay, this is how, this is how a phone connection was obtained, and how complicated it was, and how rich and privileged you felt when your home had one telephone connection. It may be unimaginable for you all, but that's how it was just 20 years ago.
Exactly, and that phone was like, you had to give messages to your neighbors. People would say, can we please ask someone to call your number? And yeah, it was a position of privilege, not like now where family has 5 phones,
Yes.
one per person.
Yes.
So, what's very interesting about this book is that while it's very Calcutta or Calcutta or Kolkata, depending on how you're looking at it, there are some aspects which are just human. I mean, that's just how human nature is, how people are, no matter where they might be, or the various things one does in their day. So it's so. In fact, I was reading this when I was traveling to the UK, and I shared it with a friend from Australia. She was saying, I was just telling her this is a new book that I'm reading, and it was a book. It was a story about the book covers, and she said, "Oh, this just takes me back to my childhood, because we did the same as well. Though it was set in a completely different country or continent."
And she's an Australian.
Yes.
Oh, and she could connect with this.
Yes,
That's interesting.
with the brown paper. I don't know how many of you cover your books with brown papers anymore, but you do, right? So that's something, apparently it's universal, which I didn't know till then. So it's, really interesting how you can find different narratives within it. And how did you choose characters who you wanted to sort of base your stories on?
So one rule that I applied, there are about 12 odd, essays or chapters, as you may call it. And also, other than the foreword, you can start reading the book from any chapter, depending on whichever title you're liking. It's not a linear read in that sense. So one rule that I applied to every character that I've written about is they are more or less not in vogue. They are really, the days are over, or that practice has almost entirely changed. For example, there's a chapter here on load shedding. How many of you have experienced load shedding? Really? No, I don't believe you all. Not the way we have. So how many minutes in a day have you experienced load shedding? 3 hours. Half an hour. Yes, you guys are not going to be happy about this. All right, so maybe I say that you should start reading the book from the load shedding chapter. The chapter is called Let There Be Light. But you see, for example, the way we have grown up with load shedding is that I'm sure if you go back home and ask your parents, ask your mothers, I'm sure that you don't buy candles the way you buy atta and chal, okay? But in our homes, there used to be packets of candles in varying sizes that came, depending on how urgent the need to, give out the light used to be. And the entire generation, in fact, 2 generations in this city, at least 2, if not 3, at least 2 have grown up in darkness. We have given exams, we have dealt with all kinds of problems, we have cooked, we have had meals. I mean, much before candlelight dinner became so fashionable, Calcutta made it fashionable much before. We've been having candlelight dinners for 30 years. So one of the rules, therefore, that was applied is that most of these characters in episodes are no longer in vogue.
Would you like to introduce one of the characters?
Okay.
Share a bit about what's there in the book.
So we just mentioned that many of you still cover your books every year, the new books, the school books. Yeah, and all of you mostly still use brown paper? No. So that's the change. Yeah. That's the change. So this is I'll read out a bit from this chapter called Brown Paper Clothing. And it comes with a little illustration, which, if you can see on the left. And I'll just read out a few paras. I'm given to understand that they now come prefabricated in transparent, highly durable sheets, complete with labels et al., that are designed to last throughout the year. Some others have gone green, with the wrapping coming in paper that proudly proclaims its recycled status in keeping with today's carbon footprint conscious generation. No fuss, no mess. It has become quite a simple off-the-shelf purchase, the convenience and efficiency of which has led to the once annual ritual of brown paper clothing becoming fairly null and void. The ritual would be same every year, since many of us went to similar kinds of schools. The new academic sessions for us would begin at similar points too. But it was only after towards the fag end of the holiday that sometimes felt a little long when they were on, but a trifle short when it was close to getting over, that it would dawn upon us to start preparing for our new class. Since hardly any of us had any homework to deal with, maybe barring the odd essay on how did you spend your summer holidays, and tuitions were unheard of, the only preparation was to get our books ready for the next academic year. Procuring the textbooks wasn't much of a deal. Most of the times, we were meant to use second-hand textbooks that had been carefully preserved after their first run with an older sibling, a cousin, or even a distant acquaintance. In case the textbooks were not available within this network, one would only have to hop over to College Street aboard an L9 for a second-hand copy and invariably come out triumphant. Special prize for a kid who knows what is L9. No teacher prompting. Right? Can you be more specific? Yes? So it's a double-decker bus. Yeah, the city had the double-decker buses, and L9 was one of those routes which practically all of us sat in and went to College Street, or at least past College Street. The idea of purchasing textbooks was considered only when there was a change in the prescribed text, or the one available for use was particularly tattered. When we did purchase textbooks, there were only one or two prescribed shops we would go for. For all the girls in the family, there was a hole in a Park Street wall called Metropolitan Book Company. It was almost like a clandestine slit through which one slipped in a sheet where the list of required books was noted down. There would be a standard question from the grouchy salesman. Modern? Con class? Modern meant modern high school. Once he knew which class, he would pull out the entire set effortlessly, as the list had not changed in years, and he knew the list by heart. If the purchase was sizable, or if he was feeling generous, he would throw in a sheet of labels, free of charge. Carefully clutching the precious packet, we would head back home. And just one para maybe. Reams of brown paper, ranging from shades of mahogany to teak, were soon ripped and slashed to suit the covers of different books. My aunts and my mother were past masters at the job. I wondered if they ever felt bad for having been denied the opportunity to consume the textbooks they clothed for us year after year. even if they did, they kept it to themselves, perhaps sanguine in the fact that what had been denied to them was being made available to us. The task was carried out quite gaily, with Vivid Bharati providing background music, or a pocket transistor belting out cricket commentary in Hindi. और खूबसूरती से लॉन्ग रन के आगे से जाते हुए गेंद बाउंड्री के लाइन के उस पार. First, the books were strategically placed on sheets of brown paper to be cut in a way that ensured minimum wastage. Once this was done, the protruding ends of the paper would be deftly folded into the front and back covers, edges smoothened out, and sellotape slapped on for support in case of particularly heavy or large books. I played a very key role in the adhesive department. Holding the sellotape roll around my thumb, I would cut small pieces and keep them taped to the edge of my fingertips so that they were ready to be peeled off and applied on demand. Next came the second-hand books that needed a delicate makeover. This operation began by taking off their worn-out covers, clothing them with a fresh brown paper sheet, and gently mending their frayed edges. Post the makeover, even these textbooks matched the newly purchased ones, at least cover for cover. I'll stop there.
That was lovely. You took me back, I don't know how many decades, remembering all the days that we spent, our siblings and us. And it was just an
What
exercise.
a picnic it used to be. It used to be a picnic.
Yeah, you used to plan your days that, oh, we are going to be wrapping our... I can see some teachers also nodding their heads.
And smiling away.
Yes.
And teachers used to be so annoyed if they weren't properly covered or if the tapes were coming off and so on.
Yeah, and there was a proper technique of doing it. It couldn't be done in any
which way.
Yes, so it's really lovely, and it's not just sort of sharing something that we did, but also a slight commentary on, like you mentioned, the women, yes, and also, you know, who didn't themselves perhaps have a chance to see. So I think it's that's what you young people, I mean, even if you can't relate to some of the things that happened, it's something that happened in the past, but also to sort of understand the privilege that you have now. You know, that women, I mean, how much of education was...
So many of our aunts and mashis and pishis, you know, they did this and they saw us going to school or packing our bags, whilst perhaps for 20, 30 years, their lives revolved around from morning till night and again the next morning, nothing but household chores. But I never heard them complain in the way I hear so many people complaining about everything today. And like I said, I do sit back and wonder today that why did they not complain? Is it because they never even thought that they could have that right? Or were they at least happy that, you know, some of us were doing well and were interested in studies and so on? And it suddenly makes me remember these cute lines that they used to say, you know, if we weren't doing so well in school or weren't concentrating or any such thing, then they would say, my grandma would say something like, what was it? Padhoge, likhoge, banoge nawab, or banoge kharab. So do you all still know it? I'm delighted to know that. So the grandmother, and is it your grandmas who tell you this line, or is it the mothers? Grandmas, how nice. Thank God for grandmas.
So I think that was a lovely little peek that we got into her writing and, you know, her book. Maybe we should have one more, if you could introduce another character.
Are you all interested in poems, or should I read out another piece? Because the book ends with a poem. So another piece? Okay. Okay, poem later.
Piece first and then the poem, yeah? Let's just keep everyone happy.
Okay, so this is a piece called The Sack. Now, who carries a sack in your head? When you think of a man carrying a sack, what is the image that comes to your mind? Dhobi wala. Who else? Oh, but a workman working in the field doesn't come home, no? Okay, let me give you a clue. if you think of one man who you wait for, an elderly man, Santa Claus, that's right. Who said that? Nice. So we are on the same wavelength. So this was a guy that used to come to our home. Kids were sitting a little far away. You can see it later. And the chapter is called The Sack. He used to give you a very quick introduction, this gentleman used to carry a big bulky sack which was loaded with books and comics. And, for me, that was the best goodie bag that I had seen in my childhood. So I'll read out a few paras from here. Despite his brown skin and receding hairline, he was someone who came closest to our idea of Santa Claus. At least his sack sure did. The loaded sack belonged to a clean-shaven, benign-looking gentleman who would ritually land at our doorstep every Sunday morning, hunch down to his designated spot, and greet us with a customary Ram Ram. In less than a few seconds of him landing, the news of his arrival would spread across floors and rooms in anticipation of the loot. For his large, weather-beaten cloth sack that he lugged around was not an ordinary bag. It carried a treasure trove for most of us. Remember Chanda Mama or Champak? The illustrated weekly, Dharmyug, Reader's Digest, or Sports Star with its prized tearaway posters? As a child, nothing could match the thrill of having a new Tintin in hand, or an Asterix, the Commando comics, and copies of dog-eared Archies. Amar Chitrakatha, Pinky, Billu, Chacha Chaudhary, Indrajal, Betal, oh, the list was endless. Our dear Kitabwala, or bookseller, was our first ever mobile library who kindled the entire family with his weekly dose of magazines and lent us several books, comics, and paper bags to read at ridiculously low rates. As far as I was concerned, he was one of my first introductions to the world of reading. For though our home had a lot of Indian spiritual and religious texts, as well as statutory collections like the Encyclopedia Britannica, those were not the reads that young boys and girls were looking for. Unknowingly, his sack became our passport to a wider world, bringing us stories that at least temporarily unshackled us from the very predictable, chaotic confines of North Cal. Though it has been more than 2 decades since I last saw him, his image rings fresh in my mind as if he paid us a visit only last Sunday. An extremely soft-spoken chap, perhaps in his 50s or maybe less. The only attire we ever saw him in was a colorless cotton full-sleeve kurta that may have seen better days, and a dhoti. His ever-faithful muddy brown sack always hung from his shoulders. Within a few minutes of him settling down, he would be offered a cup of tea, bhade cha, which he would savor gratefully, emitting grunts of satisfaction. A copy of Tintin in hand, or at least the latest tinkle, could arm you with great bargaining powers amongst friends and peers. Serious negotiations between cousins ensued when we could not afford to rent a read individually and had to pool in our resources to rent the book for the week. Of course, the first rights of reading belonged to the one who had the largest shareholding in the joint venture just undertaken. Sometimes, when we couldn't afford to buy a new comic, we could quickly pull it out of his bag, even when he sipped his tea, and give it a read. Even if the entire comic could not be read, we managed to go through favorite sections. Humor in Uniform, Supandi, Grandma's Gupshup, all life is like that. Kitabwala would register mild protests, saying it was new, imploring us to return it as we continued to negotiate another minute and devour it in a hurry. Never once, though, I remember him escalating complaints to the seniors. The elders, too, did not really meddle into the great fuss that carried on, unless covers such as James Hadley Chase were seen changing hands. Now, calculating the damages was not an ordinary affair. Spending 2 rupees a week on some meaningless reading was taken very seriously, and answers had to be given to respective mothers. Kitabwala had a very methodical way of keeping accounts. He carried a hardbound hisab khata, or an accounts diary, that had green lines running through the pages and neat margins. Right in the beginning of the year, he would dedicate a page for each one of us with our full name and address on top. He also put our mother's name in brackets, so he knew whom to follow up with in case our dues piled up. Anyone who had 2 pages dedicated to his name was a very serious customer. I'll stop there.
That's a unique mobile library.
Yeah, so
mobile
again,
bookshop.
why he has been chosen, Kitabwala. And do you know, even though he came to our homes for about 20, 30 years, we still don't know his name. Because I think he also had started believing that his name was Kitabwala. You know, his son, whose name I know, and he has a grandson whose name I also know. But if I ask his son, either I will say Pitaji kaise hai, or I will say Kitabwala kaisa hai, because we don't know his name. And that is how he has been. But just because we didn't know his name, it wasn't that his identity or the respect or anything. In fact, such was the respect and love that the entire family had for him, that he has been, you know, kind of put down and has a chapter all to himself in the book.
Of course. I think we could go on and listen to all the characters. They're really quirky, nice, interesting, unique characters. And but we have a few more sessions lined up, so I think we'll have to close this soon. We can take a couple of questions. If you'd like to ask teachers, students, if you'd like to ask any questions, if we can have the mic.
Just raise your hand if you have a question.
Yeah, a mic will reach you.
Yeah. There are no such things as stupid questions. So ask whatever is floating in your mind right now.
Yeah, just... Can we get a mic here? Good to see you again.
Is there a mic?
Hello, I'm Michelle from the Newtown School. This isn't a question, but I'd like to appreciate the fact that you've taken something so simple and made, a book about it, right? Like, and I think a lot of us can relate to these things, but we see them every day, but we don't, take notice that it's happening. And I feel like from this I can value it more. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Yes, actually, you're absolutely right. Other than the fact that many of these ideas and notions and practices are on their way out, I think it is also something about this city which knows how to celebrate the ordinary. You know, we don't need a mega event to happen every day in our lives, because at that rate, our life would be a circus, and we surely don't want our life to be a circus. It is only when we can appreciate the small things, the everyday, ordinary conversations, chit-chats, banter, silences, all kinds of things, the world around us, that we also are better immersed and more involved with what is going on around us. Otherwise, if we only need, a massive cruise party to make us feel good about our lives, I'm sorry, that's only going to happen a few times in your life. What are you going to do about the rest of the time? So yes, it is about appreciating daily encounters more.
One more question here.
Question or comment?
You might have a lot of childhood memories, so how did you manage to choose a few of them and write them down?
Oh, very good question. There were at least 3 or 4 chapters that I wanted to add. And it's very hard because you have written all your chapters out with, equal sincerity. So which one do you leave out and which one do you put in? And that's the publisher's call. And I think they felt that the ones that may, achieve maximum resonance with readers were the ones that should go in. Yeah. For example, there was a chapter that I had written about how cricket is played in Eden Gardens, the 5-day test series. And again, what a massive picnic it used to be. For the entire family, for neighbors, what a squabble of tickets it would be. There were bets going around that if Gavaskar made more than this, then the next day this boy or this girl would get the ticket. I mean, all kinds of things went on. So also the 5-day series at Eden Gardens, one of the key highlights there was the halftime. And the amount of food we consumed in the halftime was ridiculous. It was as if we were braving the sun on the field and pitching and batting and fielding. I don't know, it is something about eating in a group or eating whilst playing or watching people play. Appetites go up. And these huge steel carriers would come from home, which would take hours to prepare and precisely 5 minutes to be over. So there were some other chapters, but I had to leave them out.
Thank you for asking that, because I think that was a question that I wanted to ask as well. And I'm sorry we are out of time. So we'll wrap it up here. But this book is available at the Story bookstore, which is our festival bookstore partner. Outside the gate on the right, there's a counter. And if you buy it today,
I can sign it
then
for
she
you.
can sign it for you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Supriya.
Thank
for
you
this
so
lovely
much. Thank you,
conversation.
Ruchira. Thank you so much.